Well, welcome everybody to the Ed Kilgore Show, and we have a vault story for you today I think you're going to enjoy. It deals with Scotty Bowman, the greatest NHL coach, maybe best coach of all time ever, and some interesting developments we had going back and forth when I was with the Sabres covering Scotty Bowman, so we'll have that coming up right after this. Big thank you to Blue Tusk Tech and also to Global Wine and Spirits for being our sponsors, and we thank you very much. Without any question, the most fascinating person I ever had an association with in a 40-plus year TV broadcasting career, that was William Scott Bowman, who all of us know as Scotty. Sports Illustrated once named him the best coach of any pro sport, and the numbers don't lie. Bowman's going to be 90 in September, and after living near the 6th fairway at Transit Valley Country Club for a long time, Bowman now spends most of his time around Sarasota, Florida, I'm told. More on that, but a quick shout out to our sponsors, Blue Tusk Tech. They're in Orchard Park, and then McKinley Wines and Spirits right near the McKinley Mall right across the street. Great people and Buffalo supporters. Well, Bowman is the NHL's all-time winningest coach. 1,244 regular season wins, 223 playoff wins, and a staggering total of 14 Stanley Cups won as either a coach, player, or executive. Only Jean Beliveau had more cups. He had 17 as a player with the Canadiens. Bowman was both beloved and feared, and that includes by yours truly. And it took me a while to catch on that Scotty enjoyed keeping people, especially media people, off balance. Only later did I learn that Bowman was a master psychologist, and he wasn't always as upset as it appeared. But I was woozy most of the time, to be fair, around Scotty. He coached the Sabres 7 seasons starting in the 79-80 season. Now, he came to the Sabres after winning 5 Stanley Cups in Montreal, but he never came closer than the semifinals in Buffalo after amassing some serious talent. What a shame. After being fired by the Sabres, Bowman went on to win the Cup in Pittsburgh, followed by 3 more Stanley Cups in Detroit. Now, when Bowman was hired by Seymour and Norty Knox back in 1979, it was big news in the sports world, but the Sabres didn't hire him as a coach, at least not at first. He was hired as the general manager. Still 45 left open the possibility that he might go behind the bench again, and the temptation, I think, was just too much, even though Bowman did court some coaching candidates. He enjoyed the wheeling and dealing aspect as GM. He once acquired 6 first-round picks, 3 each season in 2 consecutive seasons. 2 of them, Dave Andreychuk and Phil Housley, both joined Bowman eventually in the Hockey Hall of Fame. But handling both jobs, very difficult, which Bowman later would acknowledge. Channel 2 was doing the Sabre broadcast when Bowman was brought on board, so it was inevitable that I'd be working with him as the intermission host for 30 games a year. The problem eventually was I was also wearing 2 hats, as sports director at Channel 2, along with the Sabres job. That led to some early confrontations. I broke the story that Rick Martin was going to sue Bowman and the Sabres for $10 million, claiming Bowman forced him to play with a knee injury. Boom went the dynamite. By the way, Martin eventually was awarded $2 million. He was traded to the Kings, and his career was shortly over. But Martin and I were friends at the time, which obviously isn't what we're taught in journalism school, but that's how I got the scoop. He called me, met me at his apartment with the lawsuit papers in hand. Now, I did try to reach the Sabres for a comment earlier that afternoon, but they didn't get back to me. So I did the interview, and not 10 seconds after the newscast ended, Ed, you have a phone call, and it was from the late Bob Swados, the Sabres general manager. And he goes, Ed, Bob Swados, what the blankety blank bleep bleep are you doing? I'm just now learning, watching your interview on TV. I knew nothing about this. Well, this also created a problem with management at Channel 2. They were kind of caught in the middle. They wanted me to back off, but they were kind of wasting their time because the horse was already out of the barn. Sorry about that. Now, we eventually worked it out, but it wasn't a good way to start a relationship. On road trips, I always had to let Scotty know what player I wanted to interview between periods. Now, that sounds simple, but I can count a handful of times Bowman raised his voice at me in either airports or hotel lounges over some aspect of my choice. One, Tony McKegney, what's he done lately? Okay, not a hill to die on. I moved on. Then, Rob McClanahan, fresh off that 1980 USA Olympic gold medal team. He was a Sabre draft pick. He joined the team in Pittsburgh. Now, I didn't see Scotty right away, but I did spot Rob, so I simply went over and asked him if he would come on. He was excited about it, great, no problem. But here's Bowman now out of nowhere, right in my grill. He says, so you ask him before you ask me. Well, what if I said no? Now I'm the bad guy. I apologized, and he relented, and Rob did a great interview, but Scotty wasn't wrong. One year, Andreychuk suffered a broken collarbone just before the playoffs, which was a huge blow. The Sabres, of course, needed him. He was their leading scorer. The Sabres issued an official statement that he had tripped on his basement stairs carrying a garden hose. You know, that happens. But 3 different Sabre players, and I promise till death do us part I'll never reveal their names, told me that Andreychuk was goofing around on some kind of a motorbike and he hit a hole and flew over the handlebars, thus breaking his collarbone. They were really upset with him, but publicly kept the party line. Now, here again, the dilemma. Am I the Sabres PR guy or am I a journalist? Well, I'm a journalist, so I broke the story on Channel 2 and the excrement hit the fan big time. The Sabres PR staff told me that Scotty wanted to see me in his office. Oh boy, that's going to be fun. Well, it was a totally different Scotty, because by now we did have an improved relationship, and he wasn't on the attack at all. He just said, Ed, I'm sure you have your sources and your reasons. Are you really convinced that they were accurate, that Dave did what you said he did? And I said, I assure you it's very accurate. Scotty didn't even know. Now, the next couple of days, he called in every single player one by one to ask if my story was true. They all denied it. Funny thing, though, Scotty believed me over them, and the real confirmation came when Andreychuk wouldn't even speak to me. No confrontation or denial, just a cold shoulder. And you really saw that later on. Andreychuk scored 5 goals in a game at Boston, and he wouldn't even come on camera with me after the game. So he was ticked. For the record, we did shake hands years later, but without bringing up any specifics. Andy just said, no problem, Ed, that was a long time ago, and it was. Another time, I ran with a rumor of a trade, not always a good thing to do, but it was pretty juicy. Bowman told Mike DeGeorge on camera, I'd like to trade Ed Kilgore somewhere for a broadcaster to be named later. He was really ticked, or so I thought. But the next day we were flying out. I was at the counter getting my ticket. Scotty walks up to the desk and right shoulder to shoulder says, well, you got me that time. I didn't think you were going to run that. He was just taking one for the team. Then another time, we're in Quebec for Game 5 of the division semifinals in the 84-85 season. The Sabres lose a heartbreaker, blowing a 2-goal third-period lead. For some reason, the Sabres are in a tiny little dressing room, and when the media came in, Scotty told those of us with cameras that we couldn't come in. And I kind of blurted out, so we can only talk if you win? Well, instead of blowing up, Bowman calmly said, it's just too crowded. We'll bring the players outside the room if you want them. And I thought that was pretty cool. I did get some ribbing on the flight back about questioning the NHL's greatest coach. Over time, I did become very fond of Bowman, who was one of the most brilliant hockey minds I've ever been around. Unbelievable. After leaving the Sabres, we even played a round of golf, and he helped me break the story of Alex McGillney's defection. I saw a one-liner on the Associated Press wire that reportedly Alexander McGillney didn't say what team had defected from the Soviet team in Stockholm, Sweden. That's all. I remember the Sabres had drafted him in the 5th round, knowing he would probably never play in the NHL, but Jerry Meehan took that chance. So I called Scotty, and Scotty says, Meehan, the Sabres general manager, and Don Luce, a former player who was on the staff, they were at that moment on their way to Sweden to bring McGillney straight back to Buffalo. Meehan had a law degree specializing in immigration law. But how was I going to confirm this? So I called Diane Luce, Don's wife. She was really shocked I was calling. I know Diane. And she didn't want to say anything. Finally, I just said, will I be wrong if I run this at 6 o'clock? There's a pause. No. Then she proceeded to tell me when the flight was arriving, so we were there waiting, and thank you, Scotty. Keep them in the fairway. And again, thanks to my sponsors, Blue Tusk Tech in Orchard Park and McKinley Wines and Spirits in McKinley Mall. They're just great people. Thanks, everybody.